ramba, ruzhinji rwaramba, Zimbabwe yaramba, Zimbabwe yaramba, Zimbabwe yaramba. Police the police, guard the guard, chair the chair, chef the chef, save the...
Good evening and a very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us on Combating Corruption, your weekly current affairs program that focuses on all things relating to corruption. My name is Farai Gwaze. Now today on Combating Corruption, we're looking at all things related to the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority and the leakages that have been taking place at our various border posts. We do welcome your views. Feel free to send us your questions, comments and your contributions on our WhatsApp platform. That's 0719 019 358. Currently joined in studio by Mr. Tapia Manyika, who is the Director for Loss Control with the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority. Mr. Manyika, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Oh, thank you.
And also joining us from the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, we have got Dr. Mnyaradzi Magiga, who is also the Acting General Manager in line with the corporate governance. Dr. Magiga, thank you so much for joining us here today.
Good evening, Farai. Good evening, viewers. I'm glad to be here.
Now, as you're very well aware, the country's borders have been known rather for having rampant leakages, and let's also have an appreciation of the current state of the leakages taking place at our borders. Vamanyika.
Okay, thank you, viewers. Yes, I would want to acknowledge the existence of leakages through our borders. It's a fact that leakages are there, but as the Revenue Authority, we also have strategies that we are putting in place to make sure that those leakages are minimized.
Now, before we get into those strategies, let's look at what has contributed towards the current leakages and in what manner we find them.
Yeah, some leakages are happening direct at the border, where you have people trying to circumvent the processes direct at the border. You also have leakages happening along the borderline, which is very porous because of we are a landlocked country. So it's very difficult to police the entire borderline. So you also have other leakages coming along the borderline.
What would you say has contributed towards the porosity, or should I say the leakages along the borderline?
Yeah, we are relying mainly on use of the human men. We would want to deploy officers to patrol the borderline, but because it is mainly bushy and dense, you would find that it is not possible to be at every square meter of the borderline. So that has contributed very much. We would rather want a system that will be able to monitor the borderline completely, which is what we would want to move to now, electronica.
I think you alluded earlier on to a strategy that would be developed to be able to address that particular issue. Just briefly tell us a bit about the particular measures in terms of the strategic approach that you've taken towards addressing those leakages.
Yes, we have combined forces with other state security agencies. We also have our own enforcement team that we deploy along the borderline. And but what we are finding is that even with such a combined force, you also realize we are unable to cover the whole borderline. So that's what we are now looking at. We would want to develop a system that will be able to monitor the entire borderline real time. Right.
Dr. Magiga, as has been highlighted here by Mr. Manyika, that there are serious challenges in terms of being able to manage the leakages. There are these observations been made by the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, but more importantly, how are you looking to be able to address them?
Thank you very much. I think he has actually given a very concise explanation on how these things are happening. But as Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, we continue to be very much worried, because at the end of the day, if we're going to line up even individuals of 1 meter apart along the border, we can still have these leakages taking place. So we are now looking at issues of human element, where the people themselves should have to actually change some kind of behavior and raise their levels of integrity. Because some of these reports that we get as Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission are such that there is collusion between even the state security agents, our own Zimra, the immigration and the like. We have to be worried as a country and look at our own institutions there and say, as Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, we've got a duty now to work with you people and find out the best way we can actually plug the loopholes so that Zimbabwe can start to benefit.
Dr. Magiga, if you could share with us very briefly some of the reports that you have received, but more importantly, how you've looked at addressing them.
Okay. It is now very clear, and the social media has got a lot of information of people who actually bribe our own officers, the Zimra officers, the immigrations, what have you, they in order to bring in, for example, these second-hand clothes, the bails, to mention them. There are also bribes, reports on bribes where people have actually to pay less when they are supposed to be paying more when they do the declarations. There are reports that some people are actually now coming up with their own bridges, constructing a bridge across the Limpopo River, trying to make sure that they don't use the normal channels. And all those avenues, for your own information, only mean that Zimbabwe is going to have less and less income. Now, let me tell you one thing. If you look at the Limpopo as it were, you have got also vehicles themselves actually coming through the rivers. In the sand there, what has not yet gone through the river is on a trend, because they obviously it cannot cross. So we are saying the problem is becoming bigger and bigger by the day.
I'm glad that you do say that the problem is becoming bigger and bigger, and you bring up bribes. Mr. Banyika, it seems as though that there is a complicitness of the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority when it comes to bribes, as been highlighted by Dr. Magiga. And I'm glad that you nodded by agreeing that it seems to be a problem. How are you handling that within your Revenue Authority?
Okay, thank you. What we have done as the Revenue Authority, we have realized that we are going to live with corrupt elements throughout the entire life of the Revenue Authority. It's unavoidable because of the nature of the business that we are in. So the authority has come up with structures to deal with bribery and corruption. We have actually set up a unit which is specifically dealing with bribery and corruption, which is the Integrity Management Unit, which is a full-time unit so responsible to respond to corruption cases, and that has helped very much because
So it's fair to acknowledge that you do agree with Dr. Magiga that there is corrupt activity taking place with Zimbabwe Revenue Authority officials at the border post.
Yes, we have had cases where officers were arrested, but also let me be very quick to say we have almost everyone at the border involved.
Well, I look forward to being able to unpack how you've addressed those particular issues after the short break. We'll take a short break and be right back with more Combating Corruption. Stay tuned. Good evening and a very warm welcome to you if you've just joined us here on Combating Corruption, your weekly current affairs program that focuses on all things relating to corruption. My name is Farai Gwaze. Today we're looking at the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority, but most notably around the leakages taking place at our various border posts. I'm currently joined in the studio by Mr. Tapiwa Manyika, who is the Director for Loss Control with the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority. And I'm also joined by Dr. Mnyaradzi Magiga from the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, who's the Acting General Manager in line with corporate governance. Now, before we took a break, Mr. Manyika, you had acknowledged the egregious concern of Zimra authorities also being complicit to bribes and corrupt activity taking place at our various border posts. How are you addressing that particular issue?
Okay, thank you. The authority has come up with a basket of measures. We have realized that corruption is very attractive at the moment. So the whole thrust is to make corruption very unattractive. Yes, we have come up with lifestyle audits. I'm sure you have heard some officers losing their property. We are trying to say, look, corruption does not pay. If we then follow up and recover that property, you are left worse off than what you were before committing corruption. So we would want to make sure that corruption is not attractive. We have also come up with what we call corruption risk assessments, which is a proactive approach where we are going along the whole revenue authority value chain at all nodes, trying to see areas where there are gaps that needs to be addressed. So
would you go so far as to say that the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority's current systems and measures are efficient?
Yeah, they are efficient,
right.
But because things always change, you have what is efficient to
So
them.
if there's a significant amount of efficiency, Dr. Magiga, I'd like to bring you in there. We've always discovered that a lack of efficiency is the breeding ground for corrupt activity. How then do we find ourselves, as Mr. Manyika has highlighted, with an efficient system, yet we have got corrupt activity taking place?
Thank you very much. I think he continues to toe the correct line in terms of what Zimra is doing. And the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, we are very proud of the model that Zimra has actually come up with, the model for lifestyle audit. It is the only organization in Zimbabwe that we can talk about in terms of good corporate governance. However, let's move on and talk about some of the issues that I believe that with the efficiency they are talking about, they need to move a step further. How can our own Zimra at Kurima House have all those touts, what people calling themselves, what do they call themselves, outside their own doors and corridors, pretending to be assisting the people? And yet we know the same people are the cheats who are actually taking the money that is supposed to be given to Zimra and end up in treasury. Now, what we are saying is Zimra must start cleaning up from their doorstep, because the corridors are flooded with people who call themselves clearing agents. Why don't they have offices?
Mr. Manyika, cause of concern there regarding to the filth that Zimra finds itself with at its doorstep.
Yeah, we have, like another point where revenue is moving, we have a lot of people who come in, try to assist our clients illegally. We have always gone public to say, when you would want Zimra service, get into the office, don't deal with touts. We have tried to
But is it not because of an inefficiency for the public to engage the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority that we find ourselves with touts emanating and taking advantage of those problems?
I think that's a cultural issue. People are now used to try and bring in shortcuts. If you get direct to Zimra, you get your service. But if you want to incorporate third parties, you also get service, but at an additional cost.
Is the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority overburdened to be able to ensure efficient service delivery to the public?
No. The authority is ready to offer service to the public efficiently.
Right.
And we have had the cocktail of measures as far as improving on our technology so that we respond in good time. But the public, for some reasons, you find them miling around with touts and in the process losing their hard-earned cash.
Well, Dr. Magiga highlighted earlier on that we are very well aware of these touts who are there, who are causing these particular problems, and it seems as though that they remain a contributing factor towards the revenue authority's functions. This is where the public gets confused here. Are these people here coming in to assist the revenue authority in being complicit with some of these corrupt activities, or is it a failure of the revenue authority to actually deal with the challenges at hand?
Yeah, these touts are not bringing in anything new into the Zimra process, except trying to be a go-between. So we discourage that. We actually don't like them. We have tried to engage state security to remove them. They are removed today. Tomorrow they are back.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you took me that up. Dr. Magiga, also to bring you in there, you spoke highly of the measure that the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority has brought in with regards to lifestyle audits. Is that not too little too late? Because after all, the leakage would have gone in, it'd been going through the economic cycle, our assets would have been acquired, homes and cars and luxury vehicles, and by that time we've all lost out. How then do we actually have some sort of recourse? It seems a little too late.
Thank you very much. I think the idea remains noble. And if Zimbabwe and all our institutions are going to copy from Zimra, then we can have a better Zimbabwe and we can actually start to breathe some life into the industry. Now, what we are talking about under the lifestyle audit, which is Zimra is championing, is the issue that if each and every organization was going to copy or have a template which is better than Zimra, then we are assured of a system, a country that can be rest assured that the money that flows into the country in and out can easily be accounted for. But as it is now, I will tell you, and this is not for research, but I've actually come to know that if Zimra were to say 3 or 5 officers from Beitbridge today have been transferred to Zvishavane and any other inland port, those people would deny. The next thing is they resign quickly and they take up duties at Beitbridge as private operators.
Right.
So to us, and anybody who is economically minded sees that probably the same people can see that there is a certain avenue in which better money can be made without even sweating in their offices on the daily duties that they've signed contracts for.
I am slightly concerned when we do hear situations of those who can be suspended or even removed from the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority and then taking advantage of acting as independent actors on behalf of the public to take advantage of the systems that the Zimra has, considering that they would have had first-hand information prior. It doesn't seem as though that there's a regular upgrading or changing of system mechanisms within Zimra to ensure that there will be no illicit flows of finances, especially with leakages. Help us understand how you've managed to mitigate that particular problem, Bamanyika.
Yeah, I'll start with those that are transferred and probably refuse. We have got a transfer policy where we regularly move those officers around. But of course, you have some who say, I don't want to move away from Beitbridge, I'm resigning, but there are very few. But those will be treated like any other tout elsewhere. We don't like them in the system. We will try to we have an intelligence unit that looks around at those to say, this one remained in Beitbridge. What is the person doing? Is he not compromising our systems? So in terms of systems, to try and flush them out, yes, we have.
Well, it does seem as though that the individual is taking advantage of the system a bit more intelligent than the intelligence unit as is. But we will take a short break and we'll come back with more combating corruption. Stay tuned.
Zimbabwe yaramba, Zimbabwe yaramba, Zimbabwe yaramba. Ruzhinji rwaramba, Zimbabwe yaramba, Zimbabwe yaramba, Zimbabwe yaramba.
Welcome back to Combating Corruption, your weekly current affairs program that focuses on all things relating to corruption. This is our final segment, and today we're looking at all things relating to the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority in line with the leakages at our borders. I'm currently joined in studio by Mr. Tapiwa Manyika, who is the Director for Loss Control with the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority, and Dr. Mnyaradzi Magiga, who is the Acting General Manager in line with the corporate governance. Now, before the break, we're looking at some of the systems compliance and intelligence review measures that have been incorporated. I do want to just very briefly touch on an issue of a tax evasion. Now, taxes contribute immensely towards our local gross domestic product and also ensuring that there is efficient service delivery throughout various parastatals and entities throughout the country. How have you found mitigating the challenge of tax evasion in line with our leakages at our borders?
Yeah, tax evasion remains a criminal offense, and the authority has also a mandate to prosecute tax evaders. But you know, as the revenue authority, the primary objective is to recover revenue. Unless we fail to recover, then we will prosecute.
What is the current position in terms of import and excise duties with second-hand goods?
Second-hand goods, an example, I'll take an example of clothes.
Clothes, yes.
Clothes, they are not allowed into the country.
When was that position put forward for clothes, for second-hand clothes to not be allowed in the country?
No, it's a position that has always been there.
All right, yet we find ourselves in situations where second-hand clothes are flooding our markets in Zimbabwe. Pizzanamo being a very clear example where we do find second-hand paraphernalia that's being made available there, and this has been happening for years.
Yeah, we have had, this is a national challenge where we have had to incorporate everyone else to try and deal with this.
It does seem as though that is a very lucrative business for bringing in second-hand clothes, and that also contributes towards the leakages that the country could be gaining from taxes, but they've been affecting us directly at Zimra. Is that not your business to ensure that those particular goods do not make their way into the borders of Zimbabwe?
Yes, that we are doing. We have got an enforcement team that is on the ground.
Yet we find them making their way into the country.
We have done seizures that are happening directly in the forest. So in as much as you would want to close all those that are coming in using the normal border,
right,
you will get others being
Dr. Magiga, I'd like you to also come into that particular area there. As has been highlighted there by Mr. Manyika, egregious concern around second-hand goods making their way into the country. A lot of loss of revenue coming in there in that regard. Systems compliances and measures seem to be failing to address that particular concern.
Thank you very much. I think this issue is actually reaching pandemic level. If you want a full explanation of this thing, you just need to go to Mpedzanamo, like you were saying. Go to Kotamai in Bulawayo. Go in any city. Things are like that. Mabero are kuduka on a daily basis.
Right.
Now, what it only shows is that maybe our security system is not so tight enough. So we need also to assist our Zimra to make sure that the police themselves, they do their normal duty.
With all due respect, Dr. Magiga, could it not be that there is a complicitness in the lucrative nature of these particular goods?
Correct.
With our security systems in place?
Correct. That would be another way to explain the same point. I want to believe that if there was no collusion amongst our Zimra employees, the police themselves, and other important agents involved there, then we can actually mitigate this one. But however, look at the issue of second-hand clothing coming into a country during a time of COVID-19, where we are not so sure whether the same clothes can actually bring some infectious diseases. It's actually putting the country at a risk to an extent that we are not only losing cash, but we are also putting ourselves in a dangerous position in as far as infectious diseases are concerned.
Right.
So we really need to work together as Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, the Zimra, the police, and all the security agents to make sure that we stop this issue of second-hand clothes coming through our borders. The other issue that probably we need to share, Farai, is apart from that, just people passing through these borders and using various types of vehicles to carry the bales, we have come to know as Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission that there are WhatsApp groups in which people can actually buy electronically the bales and they are delivered at their doorsteps.
Right.
And
that is absolutely amazing. We're very glad to discover that you've actually made those findings. But what's being done about it?
Right. So what we are doing is, as Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission, we are in the process of trying to find out how many of the people are involved through our investigative intelligence section. So very soon, I think we'll be instituting some kind of investigation to specific people who will have actually shown that they are involved in this whole issue. So we are actually interested in the issue, and we are already participating in some of the groups in order to get more information about it.
It does seem as though, Dr. Magiga, that within your monitoring of some of these corrupt activities, I'm glad that you do bring up the WhatsApp platforms. It seems as though that you've done some very intense investigations. Yes. But it doesn't seem as though that there's a resolution that has come towards Mabere, if I could put it very simply. They have been rampant in Zimbabwe. It has affected our manufacturing industry in Zimbabwe, yet they continue to flood our markets. It seems as though you are inundated and can't find a solution.
I'll tell you one thing, Farai. The Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission could be playing its ball. But I want to tell the nation point blank that there seems to be some kind of public sympathy with the people who are dealing in second-hand clothing. Why people believe that they are making a living out of something. So therefore, there is no employment. They take it as part of something that is employment to them. So there is this kind of a feeling that why should we go and trouble those people who are making all their effort to make sure that they sustain their family?
Well, because they contribute towards leakages in our system.
Yes.
I mean, listen, Dr. Magiga, with all due respect, we can't say that out of sympathy we are going to allow leakages and to come into our country, especially in terms of revenue, because we empathize with their livelihoods. Surely there are checks and balances that must be put in place to avoid that.
This is why we are saying the law is very clear. No bales into the country. Nobody should be found selling second-hand clothes anywhere. We should all go to the shops, designated shops, full stop.
Well, I guess in essence, I would like to bring this particular concern to Mr. Manyika when it comes to some of the areas that we've discussed. Some closing remarks when it comes to the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority, when it comes to tax evasion, most notably those being of money laundering. We found that there's been a rampant increase in that particular area. Very briefly, your take on that regard.
Yes, we acknowledge money laundering is another big issue in the country. We have come up with a whole new division, a new unit within the authority as well, since last year, to enforce the Money Laundering and Proceeds of Crime Act. We have a structure to deal with money laundering, and we have been doing it for the past couple of years, and we have been recognized and as one of the enforcement agencies. So you begin seeing prosecutions on money laundering coming from the Revenue Authority.
Okay. And would you say that it's been successful?
Yes, we have had some success stories. Okay. as of now, we've had our own achievements,
Right.
though it's still a learning curve, and we
Right.
hope to perfect it as we move forward.
Oh, Mr. Manyika, I'll at least allow you to close on a positive note with some of the successes that you have made, but we'll be able to at least touch on a few of those concerns. Dr. Magiga, when it comes to our compliance and our corporate governance measures that have been put in place by the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority, how can we at least ensure that the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission will act accordingly and make sure that there'll be no more leakages, as has been the case so far?
Thank you very much. The Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission will stand by its own mandate that anything that is by way of corruption, we will receive and report, or we'll find, if you find anybody doing a corrupt activity, we'll investigate and make the necessary arrest. However, we also want to urge, if government is listening, we also want to urge Zimra that most of the people who are trying to run away from paying the taxes could be they are evading taxes due to the issue of cost of compliance. Maybe it is too expensive for them. They find it too expensive. Why can't we do something so that we can actually at least get something rather than making it so expensive to the extent that nobody comes to pay? Thank you.
Dr. Magiga, thank you so much for that final closing remark. I'd like to thank my guest in studio today, Mr. Tapiwa Manyika, who is from the Zimbabwe Revenue Authority, is the Director for Loss Control there, and also Dr. Mnyaradzi Magiga, who is the Acting General Manager in line with the Corporate Governance from the Zimbabwe Anti-Corruption Commission. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Farai.
So the time that I do have, please make sure that you do keep sending us more of your contributions on our WhatsApp platform. That's 0719 019 358. That's 0719 019 358. My name is Farai Gwaze. Pleasant viewing.
Ruzhinji rwaramba, Zimbabwe yaramba, Zimbabwe yaramba, Zimbabwe yaramba, Ruzhinji rwaramba, Zimbabwe yaramba, Zimbabwe yaramba.